Today, we're diving into Jose Saramago's novel, The Elephant's Journey. Now, on the surface, it seems like this charming little story about an animal taking an incredible trip across a continent. But, with Saramago, there's always more going on. He uses this bizarre, real-life historical event to build this powerful allegory about human nature, about power, and about the sheer, mind-boggling absurdity of life itself. And here's the kicker. This actually happened. I mean, for real. The whole novel is based on a true story from the 16th century, when a Portuguese king just up and decided to gift an elephant to an Austrian archduke. And it's that one strange, almost unbelievable decision that lights the fuse for this entire narrative. This quote just nails it, doesn't it? The story feels like a fairy tale, but it's layered like an onion. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to peel back those layers together, moving from the simple plot on the surface down to the really profound questions about society and existence that are hidden just underneath. All right, so let's start with that first layer, the basic setup. Who are these people? And why on earth would anyone think sending an elephant across Europe was a good idea? So here are our main players. You've got King Jean III of Portugal and his cousin, Archduke Maximilian of Austria. And then, caught right in the middle of their royal ambitions, is Solomon, an Indian elephant who is about to become the most famous and probably the most unwilling diplomat in all of Europe. And here's the most important part, the motive. See, this wasn't some grand, necessary gift. Solomon the elephant had been kicking around in Lisbon for years, totally forgotten with no real purpose. So the decision to send him wasn't about helping the Archduke. Nope, it was a pure power play. It was a way for the king to show off his wealth and influence. It was all about prestige. Okay, so now that we get the why, let's look at the how. Because this was not a simple road trip. We're talking about an epic, incredibly difficult journey for Solomon and his guide, a very patient, long-suffering Indian man named Subro. I mean, just look at the scale of this journey. It's absolutely staggering. It started in Lisbon, went all the way across Spain, then up and over the treacherous Alps, through Central Europe, and finally landed in Vienna. The sheer physical challenge of it all is really the backbone of the entire story. And it wasn't just the distance. The whole trip was just plagued with problems. You had brutal weather, logistical nightmares. I mean, how do you feed and house an elephant on the road in the 1500s? On top of that, there was endless bureaucracy, a military escort that was pretty much clueless, and everywhere they went, they stumbled into religious and political drama. It was basically a parade of human-made chaos. Okay, so that's the story on the surface. Now it's time to peel back that next layer and get to the real meat of the novel, the powerful ideas Saramago is exploring through this completely bizarre march. So the first big idea is really a critique of history itself. Saramago's basically saying, hey, you know how we think of history as this grand, logical series of events? Well, think again. Here you have an entire continent fascinated by something that happened for no good reason at all, just one guy's ego. The message is pretty clear. History isn't always rational. A lot of the time, it's driven by the small, petty whims of powerful people. And that leads us right into the theme of power. For the kings and the nobles, Solomon isn't a living, breathing, feeling animal. He's just an object, a status symbol to be traded. And in that, he becomes this incredibly powerful metaphor for the average person, right? The one who is forced to carry the burden of political decisions they had absolutely no say in. Saramago also takes this really sharp, ironic look at organized religion. At one point in the journey, the church authorities basically try to hijack the whole spectacle. They twist it into some kind of supposed religious miracle. Now, this isn't really a critique of personal faith. It's about how powerful institutions can manipulate events and public awe just to keep their control and influence. So we've got these huge, abstract forces at play: history, power, religion. But Saramago grounds it all in a very human conflict. It's a clash between good old-fashioned common sense and rigid, pointless formality. And this conflict is really the heart and soul of the book. On one side, you have Subro, the elephant's guide. He's practical, he's smart, and he sees just how ridiculous the whole situation is. He is the voice of reason. And on the other side, you've got the aristocracy. They're obsessed with protocol and image, and they create all these unnecessary problems because of their empty rituals. I mean, this quote says it all, right? While all the powerful humans are running around, arguing, worrying about their image, and making a mess with their politics and religion, what does Solomon do? He just keeps walking. His simple, dignified presence is like a constant, quiet judgment on all the complicated nonsense of civilization. And all of this brings us to the final, and I think the most important layer of the onion. See, Saramago isn't just telling us a story about the 16th century. He's holding up a mirror and he's asking us to think about our own lives, right now. That journey from Portugal to Austria, well, ultimately it's a metaphor for life itself. Just like Solomon, we often find ourselves on a path, heading towards some destination. But how much control do we really have over that path? How much of it was chosen for us by forces completely outside of our control? And that is the first huge question Saramago leaves us with. Are we really the authors of our own stories? Or are we, kind of like Solomon, just symbols being moved around on a board in a game played by somebody else, whether that's governments or corporations or just the systems we live in? But in the end, even if we accept that a lot of our path isn't up to us, the novel asks if there's still a way to find meaning. Solomon has zero say in his journey, but he walks it with this quiet, unshakable dignity. And so Saramago leaves us to wonder, can we do the same?